and welcome back to our live coverage of the Commercial Resupplies 31 or CRS 31 mission to the International Space Station. We're out here on the press lawn, joined once again by another very special live guest. This is Mr. Pat O'Neill. If you've watched our live coverage of really any Dragon mission that's gone up recently, you might recognize this gentleman to my left, who's of course with the ISS National Lab with their outreach program and division. Pat, always good to see you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And so, we teased a little bit when Crew 9 launched about some of the science and work that's going up on this mission. The mission is now here, so let's delve a little bit more directly into it. We've talked a lot about the professional science that's been going up, but I want to actually start our conversation with some of the student science that's going up, since there's, I believe, 39 different student experiments that are launching the space station. Talk about how that type of experiment comes together. Like, I don't imagine you have a giant cauldron at the ISS National Lab where you just pick out a name from a random high school. Like, how does that partnership come about, and what's some of the experiments that are going up from the students?
Yeah, so great question. This actually stems from the Student Spaceflight Experiments program, which has been a part of 18 different missions to the space station. So what this group does is they engage communities all over the United States and actually all over the world. So there's a couple of projects that are spanning beyond just North America as well. But it allows students the opportunity to not only think of a concept of what they want to do, but also engineer the payload. And it's going to be mixed sticks, so it's something where you're trying to find a way to make it fairly easy to engineer in a space-based environment. But again, we're able to send 39 of these projects up this time around, and some of them are going to be focused a little bit more in plant biology. One of them that I just found out about the other day was there's going to be students that are sending up liquid IV. And they want to see how that's going to react in a space-based environment. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Who's to say that maybe one day down the road you're going to need to have some more electrolytes or something like that for the astronauts on station. So those are some of the projects that are flying. We're excited about it. We're also excited about the fact that it is able to give them an idea about thinking outside of the box.
Thinking outside the box, with liquid IV to worms. I mean, it's kind of an interesting gamut of things that's flying with the students.
Yeah, and typically speaking with this program, it does kind of run a full gamut, where sometimes there will be some life sciences, plant biology, there'll be some loose physical sciences. Again, it really allows for the students to tap into what it is that they want to send to station, so long as it's able to work in this mixed stick environment. And now here we are.
And, pretty typically when we see an International Space Station mission launch, we'll see something from, our neighbors to the north here in Florida, Redwire Space up in Jacksonville. They're launching another pillbox adjacent experiment. Can you talk a little bit about what they're going to be doing with the pillbox and the other industry partner that they're working with?
Yeah, so actually there's a couple of industry partners that they're working with. Probably the one that is most recognizable will be Bristol-Myers Squibb. Bristol-Myers Squibb is no stranger to launching investigations to the space station. In the past, they have launched protein crystal growth investigations, and now they're going to be doing this with the pillbox, with the Redwire team. And hopefully the thought is that they can make a more effective therapeutic for consumers or patients here on Earth. But also on top of that too, they're working with another pharma company that is actually testing an active drug that could be focused towards rheumatoid arthritis. So I think that that's also an exciting development, because over the years we've seen a lot of fundamental research on biomedical research, but now you actually have active drug targets that are being tested to see how they react in space, if they might accelerate the pathway for us to learn something and then bring that back down to us here on Earth.
And just taking a quick look at the countdown clock, it's T-minus 20 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Stephen, once the big vent happens in about 20 or so minutes, you can go ahead and bring that in the big box where we're talking right now. We'll just continue our conversation here. But you mentioned that there's, actually, you can see right now the big vent here. This is, for our viewers who are maybe not familiar, a sign that they are beginning the chill down sequence for the feed lines that are going to be allowing the second stage liquid oxygen load to begin to progress on the Falcon 9's second stage, which starts at T-minus 16 minutes. So a good visual indication that fueling is continuing on track this evening, proceeding towards a launch now in just 20 minutes exactly. So coming back to our conversation, Pat, and we'll let this go over our faces right now. Call for stage 2 RP1 load complete, so another good fueling milestone. Pharmaceutical science launching with Redwire. What are some of the other experiments that, in particular, that you've got your eye on with this particular flight of?
Yeah, so a lot of biomedical research, a lot of organoid research, and a lot of that organoid research is being funded by the National Science Foundation. So there's two projects that I'm thinking of right now. One of them is from University of California, San Diego, so UCSD. They also are no stranger to launching great organoid research station. And there's another group from Oregon State that is launching another organoid investigation. I believe theirs is focused more on organoids that are looking at cardiac issues, whereas UC San Diego is looking at more neurological issues.
And when the ISS National Lab, both looks to greenlight, partnership with various institutions, whether it's a commercial company, a research laboratory, and thinking about when they could fly to the space station. Obviously, part of that conversation is going to be, what are the astronauts looking at? What's their sort of suite on their plate? But do you also look to try to clump like or similar science together, and does that have any bearing on sort of what flies when, or is it more so driven by the readiness of the science to go up?
That's a great question. It's a little bit of all of the above. So basically, think of it as a game of like Tetris, where you have X amount of volume that can fit into a vehicle, and we're trying to find the right spaces to be able to fill that rocket up appropriately, while also being mindful of the astronaut crew time that's going to be needed to be able to support these investigations. One of the great things that we see about a lot of these CRS missions is a lot of the payloads are autonomous. So it's basically just being able to put it into a rack space, the astronaut flips a switch, and then the investigation takes off and goes from there. And that allows the astronauts to then focus on other investigations that might be a little bit more intensive on their perspective. So it really does run the full gamut. I mean, we like the ones that are very simplistic, but we also are mindful of the ones that have an awful lot of astronaut interaction too.
And, one of the last questions I'll ask before I let you go is, as the countdown clock still ticks behind us, we've asked this of our other guests. Obviously a lot goes up with a Dragon, a lot can come down with the Dragon. Is there anything particular connected to the ISS National Lab that's going to be coming back once Dragon undocks in about a month?
So again, a lot of the biomedical research typically goes up and then comes right back down. One of the luxuries that we do have is if you're looking at something that's more of a material science or a physical science investigation, sometimes they can just stay on station for an extended period of time because they don't have to come back down immediately. So I think that that's what you're going to see with this. Is this launch will have a lot of the biomedical research, the Bristol Myers Squibbs, the National Science Foundation investigations, those types of projects will be coming back down when this mission is completed. But then other ones will stay up there for 6, sometimes even longer than a year. I mean, it just depends on what the research team is looking for.
And one last tease into the future, as you're looking towards the next flight to the space station, what's going up and what's the next mission that you've kind of got like a little collective going up to the space station?
Well, I can tell you that the early part of 2025 is going to be very, very busy as far as a lot of R&D going to the space station. We're still trying to map out some of the projects that are going to be flying on both SpaceX CRS 32 as well as NG-22. But what I can tell you is both of them are going to be loaded, and it's going to be a lot of great science flying in early 2025.
Thank you so much. Pat O'Neill with the ISS National Lab. Always good to talk to you. And as you may have just heard, as Pat was wrapping up his answer, stage 2 liquid oxygen load has started. Currently T-minus 16 minutes, 14 seconds and counting. So making a lot of good progress towards the launch of that very important science, experiments, and stuff from a lot of students from around the world heading up to the space station in just about a quarter of an hour. We're gonna have lots more commentary and coverage on the CRS-31 mission, so don't go anywhere. Launch is coming up in just less than 16 minutes. You're watching Spaceflight Now. Now currently T-minus 12 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. Taking a look at our live chat here. Want to thank the now a little more than 10,000 of you who are joining with us tonight. If you haven't already, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could hit that like button for us, allow some more folks to find their way in, as we are just 12 minutes away from the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket supporting the CRS 31 mission. Also see that another one of our moderators, Astro Joe, has popped on in tonight. Good to see you, Astro Joe. A number of folks have been asking in the live chat as well where this Falcon is going to be flying once it leaves the pad, and I appreciate those who have jumped in to answer that question. But for those who maybe have not seen it or want to see it in a more graphical sense, let's go ahead and give you the lowdown on this flight. Of course, the Falcon 9 rocket stationed at Historic Launch Complex 39A there at the Kennedy Space Center. Once it leaves the pad, it's going to be flying to catch up to the International Space Station in a northeasterly trajectory. So for folks that are in northeast Florida, in Georgia, in the Carolinas, and possibly even farther up north, weather permitting, you might get a good view of the Falcon 9 rocket as it begins its climb uphill. I've had some folks that have been in Washington, D.C. that have seen a Falcon 9 rocket launch if the sky is clear enough. So for all of our friends and viewers who are up and down the eastern seaboard, if we do catch a glimpse of the Falcon 9, you take a picture of it, tag us on X. We'd love to see it. Falcon 9 first stage booster that's supporting this mission, B-1083, making its fifth flight. Going to be performing a boost back maneuver heading back here to the Sunshine State for a touchdown at Landing Zone 1 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It's coming a little less than 8 minutes after liftoff is when that booster should touch down at LZ1. A little bit different of a timeline for this mission, as the Dragon spacecraft is going to separate from the second stage, as we learned earlier today, 145 seconds prior than previous missions. SpaceX says they've learned enough and gathered enough data from flying Dragon as much as they have, that they feel like they can release the Dragon spacecraft from the Falcon 9's upper stage, again, 145 seconds earlier than they normally do. And that will allow them to have more time ahead of the second burn, the deorbit burn of the Falcon 9's upper stage following Dragon deployment. So a T plus 9 minutes and 25 seconds, almost mirroring where we are on the countdown timeline. But imagine where we are right now, but on the other side of liftoff is when Dragon will separate from the second stage. Then the nose cone opening sequence begins at T plus 10 minutes and 8 seconds. Now currently T-minus 8 minutes, 57 seconds and counting. We're less than 2 minutes away from the engine chill down sequence on the Falcon 9 first stage. It's a process of flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbopumps to protect them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. SpaceX and NASA have been busy in the overnight hours. The Falcon 9 rocket was originally intended to be rolled out and brought upright on Saturday. That didn't end up happening until around 7 p.m. last night. And of course, since this is a cargo mission heading up to the International Space Station, and as we've been discussing throughout the evening, lots of biological, biomedical, cellular science heading on board, they need to do what's called a late cargo load. Here's some B-roll of what that late load process looks like as they bring some of those experiments that need to go onto the Falcon 9 rocket just as late as possible before the mission launches. The process has largely remained the same throughout the course of the Dragon flights. This particular mission, though, you're seeing the B-roll from, we believe, is probably around the time of either Crew 3 or Crew 4, just based off of the lack of names that are surrounding the NASA meatball. You see there on the right-hand side of the screen. Now T-minus 7 minutes, 4 seconds and counting. While we didn't hear the call there from SpaceX, the engine chill down sequence would be
Stage 1, RP1 load complete.
It's getting underway. As you just heard, Stage 1 RP1 load has wrapped up. That rocket-grade kerosene tank now topped off. About 3 minutes from now, they'll finish loading liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9's first stage. Before we go ahead and get to that point, I want to thank a few more folks for your support this evening. Our thanks to one of our wonderful channel members, Mel Roberts Harold, joining us with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Mel. He says, thanks to everyone at Spaceflight Now, the behind-the-scenes techs, the mods, the nice folks in the chat, and to me for keeping it interesting each time. Well, thanks for the kind words, Mel, and thanks for your support of what we do here at Spaceflight Now. Hope all is good in Chicagoland, if that's where you're joining us from tonight. Our thanks as well to Rick Donner for gifting 5 Spaceflight Now memberships. Thank you, Rick, and welcome aboard to our 5 newest channel members. Be sure to thank Rick in the live chat if you haven't already. Thanks as well to Jacoa RSA for a 14 ZAR super chat and a very special message saying, getting married Saturday and seeing live launch. GBWY.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressing for strong back retract.
Good call for a strong back retract. We'll see.
Dragon is in configure for terminal count. Dragon is in terminal count and is on internal power.
Good calls from SpaceX. As you heard, the Dragon is now transitioned to internal power, as we'll soon see the clamp arms just beneath the Dragon trunk opening up.
Strong back lower has started.
Here you see the clamp arms beginning to move now. The transporter erector, or the strong back, will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stayed in that position until liftoff. Currently T-minus 3 minutes, 52 seconds and counting. In less than a minute, the first stage LOX tank will be full.
On countdown, LD polling for MD for final status check.
MD is go for launch.
Stage 1, locks load complete.
Good call from SpaceX there, as we're now about 30-ish seconds away from conclusion of fueling on this Falcon 9 rocket. Not sure if you can hear in the audio from our microphones out on the press lawn, but maybe hearing the NASA helicopter off in the distance, getting ready to take some aerial footage of this Falcon 9 when it lifts off.
Stage 2, locks load complete.
In less than 2 minutes. With that, the Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Want to quickly thank Richard for a $2 super chat, saying can't wait to see this.
Dragon is in auto idle. Gas launch closeouts has started.
Good call from SpaceX as they're purging the remaining liquid oxygen that may be remaining in the feed lines there. And with just about a minute to go before the liftoff, we're going to go ahead and keep our focus on the Falcon 9 rocket. We'll come back to the live chat on the other side. We'll just note one last super chat from that blonde space girl saying, let's go.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Dragon is in countdown.
And good calls. We're awaiting the SpaceX launch director's final go for launch.
SpaceX launch director, go for launch.
And with that, we are now just a little more than 30 seconds away from seeing the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket.
T-minus 30 seconds.
$20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the CRS-31 mission on the way to the International Space Station. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Max Q.
And some good calls from SpaceX.
Stage 2 engine chill.
As the CRS-31 mission now well underway. That call for engine chill to prepare the Merlin vacuum engine on the Falcon 9's second stage for ignition. We're coming up on a few different events in fairly rapid succession here. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff at about T plus 2 minutes and 19 seconds. That'll be followed a few seconds after that by stage separation. The Merlin vacuum engine will then kick on about 8 seconds thereafter. Following that, the boost back burn begins at T plus 2 minutes and 36 seconds, lasting a little less than a minute. We'll be off to the races. Some great work by our tracking team tonight. You see Miko.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
Stage 2 startup.
Stage 1 boost back startup.
A great shot of the boost back burn. This view coming to us from Pete Carson's with Max Q Productions. For those in Central Florida, and most specifically Florida's Space Coast, you may hear a sonic boom as the Falcon booster comes back through the atmosphere and makes its way to its landing at LZ-1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. This boost back burn wrapping up in just a moment here.
Stage 1 boost back shutdown.
Now looking at an onboard camera view from the Falcon 9's second stage. Nearly 4 minutes into flight. The next event we are anticipating here is the start of the first stage entry burn. It's coming up at about T plus 6 minutes and 25 seconds.
Vehicles are on a nominal trajectory.
A good call there that both the upper stage and the first stage are following the expected flight paths on this mission. Taking a live look now from our camera at the press site. You can see the glow of that Merlin vacuum engine from our perspective on the ground. Now 5 minutes into flight. We're now nearing T plus 6 minutes into this mission. We're just about 30 seconds or so away from the start of the first stage entry
Nominal
burn.
trajectory.
And as you just heard, the stages are following a nominal flight path. About 10 seconds away to the start of the entry burn.
Stage 1 entry burn.
The call for the start of the entry burn, and there it goes.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
That call the flight termination system on the Falcon 9's first stage no longer needed at this point in the flight. You're seeing some of the lights of Florida's Space Coast starting to come into view here. Nice glowing view of our little neck of the woods as seen from the Falcon 9's first stage onboard cameras. We're coming up on the start of the landing burn here, now less than 10 seconds.
Stage 1 transonic.
First stage traveling below the speed of sound. And again, for those who are here in Central Florida, be aware of that sonic boom that's coming up in the next minute.
Stage 1 landing burn. Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing is confirmed. Stage 2 and terminal guidance.
And the first stage booster B-1083 safely back down at LZ-1, accompanied by the aforementioned sonic boom. The mission not quite over yet, though, folks, so stick around as we're awaiting views coming from the second stage with the deployment of the Dragon spacecraft, which will be separating from the Falcon 9 upper stage in less than a minute.
Stage 2 shutdown.
A call for SECO 1 for second stage engine cutoff.
Nominal orb insertion.
Good confirmation of orbit insertion. Now 9 minutes into flight. We're less than 30 seconds away from Dragon separation.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Seeing now
Dragon separation confirmed.
live view inside the Dragon trunk as it got the call for separation. Hopefully we'll get some views back of Dragon as it begins to move away from the Falcon 9's upper stage. Now T plus 12 minutes, 22 seconds and counting. At this point, the Dragon's nose cone should have also opened. Taking a live look inside the headquarters for SpaceX in Hawthorne, California. We're seeing here are the two different control rooms. On the left is Mission Control Center Houston. On the right is the control center in Hawthorne, California. Of course, the Dragon spacecraft is set to dock with the International Space Station at 10:15 a.m. Eastern. It's 15:15 UTC. As we just heard, actually, from a NASA commentator, they're actually still awaiting the nose cone deploy sequence. It's scheduled to happen at T plus 10 minutes and 8 seconds. May have just been that the Dragon went out of range to get that direct confirmation. That's why we're still hanging around for additional confirmation of nose cone deployment. The journey to the International Space Station, fairly quick, 13 hours. You're seeing the nose cone deployment sequence now. This is a graphic of the series of burns that the Dragon spacecraft will conduct on its journey to the International Space Station. First up is this phase burn to raise the perigee of the Dragon spacecraft. That boost burn brings it about 10 kilometers away from the orbit of the International Space Station. It's followed by an additional close elliptic burn and then the transfer burn. This transfer burn will raise Dragon just beneath the International Space Station, about 2.5 kilometers. tomorrow morning. Live coverage from NASA will pick up as Dragon makes that approach initiation that you just saw in that final graphic there before pulling back to this view of the two mission control centers. We do have word that the nose cone has locked into its intended position. And seeing some views from the Dragon spacecraft there as well.
Of collaboration and teamwork and dedication in making missions like this possible and ensuring a continuous flow of science, technology, and resources. How have you witnessed this in your team's preparation for this mission and in recent missions?
Well, you know, operating a world-class orbiting laboratory requires extensive collaboration across all aspects of the ISS program. We have adapted to numerous items that were not as we originally planned, and we have the best team in the world, and really around the world, working solutions to every potential problem that could arise. Most recently, the outstanding international collaboration around the very busy traffic schedule to ISS, and adjusting to that ever-changing launch and landing schedule while we prepared for the future by adding new capabilities to the ISS.
It certainly has been a busy time for the space station. It feels like it's been like that for quite some time now. And with this cargo mission, add that to the traffic dossier for this mission. Well, in addition to the cargo being delivered aboard it, another important aspect of this mission is showcasing the spacecraft's reboost capabilities. We touched upon it earlier in the broadcast of this importance and what it means to the International Space Station. But can you explain the significance of this ability and its importance for the space station?
Yeah, the ISS requires periodic boosts to maintain its orbit around the Earth. And normally these are completed by Progress, the Zvezda service module, or even Cygnus. It is important to us to continue to add capability to the ISS, and performing reboost with Dragon is an awesome addition to that capability. Plus, this allows the team to gather data that helps inform the design and operation eventually of the UST orbit vehicle.
In your time and in your career with the International Space Station, you focused on maintaining its health and its integrity. How do missions like this one help achieve those goals while also advancing the station's capabilities, like you just touched upon with some of the traffic coming to and fro, also the scientific research and the technological developments?
You know, ISS depends on a steady flow of supplies to safely maintain and continue on with its mission. This mission delivers examples of all those needs for the vehicle. Dragon will deliver food, spares, and of course the very important science that we conduct on board. Dragon also returns items to the ground. This allows us to refurbish hardware instead of building new copies, investigate designs and improve reliability for future spaceflight endeavors, and allows the scientific sample return to Earth that furthers research.
Well, we look forward to seeing all that this mission has to have in store, especially those reboost capabilities for this Dragon spacecraft. Bill Spetch, Operations Integration Manager of the International Space Station. Sir, thank you very much for your time.
And you're just hearing some remarks from Bill Spetch. As we're getting ready to close out our live coverage, you see the strong back at pad 39A has come back into the upright position. Before we go ahead and close things out with a look at our mission stats as they currently stand, I want to thank a few more folks for their support this evening. Our thanks to Kathy Fugger for gifting a Spacefly Now membership. Appreciate that, Kathy, and welcome aboard to our newest channel member there. Also want to thank Curtis Smids for a $3 Canadian super chat, asking for a shout out to Leah Powell. Leah, hope you're doing well this evening. Nima N also with a $7 Canadian super chat. Thank you, Nima. Scott Thomas with a $1.50. Appreciate you, Scott. And back with a $3 super chat thereafter. Also want to thank, or welcome aboard, I should say, both V. Clark and John Beanie joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome to the two of you. Glad to have you with us, and we hope you continue to stick around with channel membership. Glad to have you on board. And with that, let's go ahead and take a look at our mission stats as they currently stand. Now that the Falcon9 first stage booster B10 1083 has made a successful trip to the International Space Station. Go ahead and go through our mission stats in just a second here. This was the 5th launch of Booster 1083, which previously launched the Crew 8 mission as well as the 4 astronauts of Polaris Dawn. This was SpaceX's 389th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 104th Falcon 9 launch of 2024. This was the 334th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 106th orbital launch of 2024, including 2 Falcon Heavy flights. This was the 123rd orbital launch for SpaceX within the last 365 days. This was the 91st orbital launch from Pad 39A. This was also the 185th overall orbital launch from this particular pad as well. Moving on to our bar chart with this mission now in the books. You can see SpaceX at 106 on the year. Looking for a couple more Starlinks to add to that number later this week. This was the 46th landing at LZ-1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, marking the 57th land landing in Florida. 78th overall when you bring in California, and the 362nd overall SpaceX booster landing to date. Finally, with some industry stats, we did have launch of Japan's H3 rocket recently, so another global launch, but starting here in Florida. This was the 75th launch from Florida's Space Coast, the 113th from U.S. soil, the 123rd from a U.S. rocket company, and the 102nd around the globe. 6 orbital launch failures on the year. Here's where the pie chart currently stands. The U.S. with those 123 launches, China with 52, a little more than a quarter of the pie. Russia's launched now 12 times so far this year. Japan with 6, India and Iran with 3 apiece, the European Space Agency with 2, and North Korea with 1 launch attempt and 1 launch failure. With that, want to thank everyone who's helped make tonight's live launch coverage of CRS 31 a success. Congratulations, of course, to NASA and SpaceX for being the ones, of course, behind the mission itself. I want to thank Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images for providing support for tracking the rocket. Also want to thank our wonderful launch photographer team of Adam Bernstein and Michael Kane If you're not already following the fellas on X, you can find them at their handles you see here on your screen. Michael is at MD Kane Jr., Adam Bernstein at ABurnNYC. While you're there, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now. And remember to tag us in any photos or video you were able to capture of this flight as it made its ascension. I want to thank our moderators in the live chat. Thanks to Aussie Space Girl, to Astro Joe, and Callistia Lee. Broad thanks to our channel member community. Thanks as well to Spaceflight Now editor Stephen Young for running the technical operations of the broadcast. And most importantly, thanks to you at home or wherever you're watching from around the world. I'll give the last word from the chat to Damian Williams with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Damian. Says awesome coverage as always. Thank you. Well, thank you, Damian, for supporting us. Be sure to head over to the launch schedule at spaceflightnow.com for the very latest on all the missions going up here and across the country. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.